let's talk about Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. I do believe that Herbert and the Chargers will take yet another major step in the AFC entering year 2 with Coach Harbaugh. But I want to go back to Justin Herbert's rookie season because I want to focus in on Justin Herbert for a second. A lot of people view Justin Herbert as this overrated quarterback. They'll look at the playoff record and they'll say, man, he's 0-2. Jordan Love, at least he's won a playoff game. And that's true. But at the same time, it's a team game. That means you're doing a lot of box score watching. That's just my opinion. When I look at Justin Herbert in the NFL playoffs, the first playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, you were up huge in that matchup. But we know what happened in the second half. That was not all on Justin Herbert. They could not run the football consistently for the entire season. When you have a huge lead like that against the Jaguars, you go out there, you run the football, you milk the clock, you win off of time possession. They couldn't do that. They put the ball right back into Justin Herbert's hand. And you had the terrible offensive coordinator and Coach Lombardi. And you had a terrible head coach and Brandon Staley. Does he deserve some blame for that loss? Sure he does. But when you have a defensive head coach that has Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack coming off the edge, and you have that huge lead because of your defense early on in the first half, and your quarterback that played amazing in the first half and had a lot of great moments in the second half, you should be able to go out there and finish off that game. That's more so on Brandon Staley and the entire coaching staff. So you really can't put all the blame on Justin Herbert. In the second playoff game from this previous season against the Houston Texans, it was a terrible playoff game. He threw 4 interceptions. 1 interception was not his fault. It went to the tight end. It bounced off his hands. It went for an interception. Does Justin Herbert have to play better in the big time moments? Sure, he does. But when I look at Justin Herbert, since day one, they gave him the keys to the castle. They were supposed to start Tyrod Taylor. He went down with a medical issue involving someone puncturing his lungs. Just a terrible situation with him. But you saw week 1, Justin Herbert was the guy. And before he got to be basically coached down by Brandon Staley because he did not coach him up, he's one of the worst head coaches in Chargers history. He had Anthony Lynn. We're talking about a young quarterback here who's had 3 different head coaches in 5 years. On top of that, 4 different offensive coordinators in 5 years. The 3 different head coaches, Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley, now Jim Harbaugh. The 4 different offensive coordinators. Shane Steichen did a phenomenal job in 2020. You went over to Joe Lombardi, who was a terrible OC. They fired him after that playoff debacle against the Jacksonville Jaguars instead of firing Brandon Staley. They went with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore could only do so much with Justin Herbert at that point in time because he was dealing with a thumb injury, so he could not call plays from under center. And anyone that's played the quarterback position, they'll let you know if you're dealing with any type of finger injury, it's hard for you to take snaps underneath the center because the center, he's giving it straight to you. They had to run a lot of plays out of shotgun, which made them one-dimensional on the offensive end until Justin Herbert had to be shut down for the rest of the season. And now he's dealing with Greg Roman. Those are 4 different OCs in 5 years. He's been the 4th most sacked quarterback since 2020. The amount of times that he has been sacked since 2020 is 171 times. That's insane. He's played with broken ribs. He's played with knee injuries. He's played with a fractured thumb as well. He's done everything possible to go out there and help the Chargers win games. Is he the perfect quarterback to have? I'll say so. He's this big quarterback that can make a lot of throws on the run. He does have some drawbacks, but when I look at Justin Herbert, you have to look at everything underneath the surface here. We look at so many situations with players in the NFL. He was given Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. That's true. Both of those wide receivers, they were dealing with injuries early on. He dealt with terrible coaches all the way through until he came across Jim Harbaugh and Shane Steichen, who was a great offensive coordinator with him, a phenomenal offensive mind. He's had some good coaches, but not at the head coaching position. He's never had that head coach to go out there and just put everything together until Coach Harbaugh, in my opinion. And we'll see how this experiment works out long term. So now look at Justin Herbert for the people that says that he's one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL year in and year out with an inconsistent run game. He's put up great numbers, 137 passing touchdowns since 2020 to just 45 interceptions with 21,093 passing yards. He's been phenomenal. And he does deserve some blame for some of those tough losses. It happens. The same thing has happened with Patrick Mahomes. The only difference is this. Patrick Mahomes, multiple-time Super Bowl winner, league MVP. I understand it. The same with Lamar Jackson, league MVP, 2 times. The same with Josh Allen, league MVP. But it's a growing process. Justin Herbert's not on the back end of his career. He's still in his 20s. And I still do believe that the Chargers, they're going to have a great shot to go out there and at least win a Super Bowl or 2 as long as he's their starting quarterback. You may say, how is this different for Phillip Rivers? Let me explain. When you look at the Chargers, like I mentioned, you had Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler was a very good gadget running back, could catch the football at the backfield, could run in between the tackles every now and then. It wasn't consistent. He didn't have the body like a prime Ezekiel Elliott, the same with a Najee Harris who's on your roster right now, or a Derrick Henry to push the pile for an extra 2 to 3 yards. You now have that in those power backs that you've brought in. And we're going to talk about the roster here for a second. So in the past, you couldn't run the football on 3rd and 1 because Austin Eckler, he just couldn't push the pile for you. You have to throw the football even more. It put more stress on Justin Herbert. He never had the opportunity to go out there and be a part of a team that could run a balanced offense and work in 2-play action. And Austin Eckler, I don't want to take this away from him. He was a very good running back, and he still is with the Washington Commanders. The same with Keenan Allen. He's one of the best wide receivers the Chargers have ever had in franchise history. You look at Mike Williams in his prime, he was awesome. They just couldn't stay healthy. So when they brought over Coach Harbaugh last season, he came out. We need guys to start taking pay cuts. I didn't draft any of you. He speaks highly of every single quarterback that he's coached up in the past with Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, J.J. McCarthy at the Michigan level. When he helped them win the national championship game, he comes over, he looks at Justin Herbert, and he says that we need to protect you day one. That's why they selected Joe Alt in the 1st round. You already had Rashawn Slater. You want to build out your offensive line to help protect this investment long term and to give him a run game. And that's what Coach Harbaugh is doing. But it came with some drawbacks last season. Keenan Allen, they let him go. He was coming off statistically the best year that he's had with his organization. He felt some type of way. They traded him to the Chicago Bears. You can still possibly go out there and bring in Keenan Allen. We'll see what happens. Mike Williams, they cut him. He was coming off a torn ACL injury. He went to the New York Jets. He's back with this roster. The Jets will trade him to the Steelers here. But at this point in time, you're dealing with a lot of unknown parts at the wide receiving position. You drafted Quentin Johnston in the 1st round. Rookie season was terrible. He couldn't catch the football at all consistently. Year 2, he played a little bit better. But you're bringing over this brand new coaching staff, Ladd McConkey in the 2nd round. You now have to see, can Justin Herbert go out there? Can he adapt to a brand new offensive coordinator? Can he elevate the pieces around him? And that's what he did last season. Now, I'm going to say this. The days of having Justin Herbert go out there and have 35 passing touchdowns to maybe 5 or 6 interceptions, those days are done. They're not going to let him be a gunslinger anymore. They want to play complementary football year in and year out. That's the one thing with Coach Harbaugh. We've seen this with Colin Kaepernick when they went to the Super Bowl against the Ravens. Granted, they lost. We've also seen this with Alex Smith in the past, even with JJ at the Michigan level. He doesn't want his quarterbacks to go out there and have over 35 pass attempts every single game. But he's never coached a quarterback like this before since Andrew Luck at the Stanford level. And even then, they still did a very good job of running the football and helping him out up front. So his first year with Greg Roman as an OC, 23 passing touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now, he did have to leave the game early against the Steelers, but you look at the passing touchdowns and the interceptions, he's very efficient. This is the one thing that gets swept underneath the rug from last season. He had the 9th most passing yards in the NFL, 3,870, with his primary receiving targets being a rookie in Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston, a number 2 wide receiver. And I look at Ladd McConkey, he was easily their best wide receiver last year. Went out there, had the 10th most receiving yards in the NFL, 1,149 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns, 14 yards to catch on 82 catches. And he did miss time last season dealing with some injuries. When he missed time, Quentin Johnston had to come in. He had to be the number 1 guy. This is how I feel about Quentin Johnston. I don't think he'll ever be that number 1 wide receiver. I wish they would have drafted someone different in the 1st round. And I look at someone like Zay Flowers that went to the Baltimore Ravens. I understand what the general manager was trying to do. He was trying to get this big body wide receiver that was similar to Mike Williams and the same with Keenan Allen. But I look at Quentin Johnston. He was very good at TCU. It was just always an awkward fit to have 3 big body wide receivers at the same point on the field. All the guys operate in the same positions of the field on the outside. But when I look at Quentin Johnston, 55 catches last year, 711 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. The one thing that he needs to work on still is his catching. He's entering year 3. He's not a bust. He's not a terrible wide receiver, but he could be better. I don't expect for him to ever be that number one guy, but as long as he could be a strong number two, I think that's the role for him. Wide receiver was a huge problem last season with the Chargers for the first time in a very long time. But at the same time, I've seen Justin Herbert go out there when Mike Williams was dealing with injuries, the same with Keenan Allen. And DeAndre Carter was his number one against Kansas City. He'll go out there. He'll still have over 300 passing yards in a game. But the wide receiving position, they need to step up. And I expect for Quentin to be better in year 3, and the same with Ladd McConkey. You bring back Mike Williams. I'm just going to be honest here. I don't expect for Mike Williams to come in and make a huge impact at all. I look at him and all the injuries that he's dealt with, a back injury, a torn ACL. I don't ever expect for him to go out there and be prime Mike Williams anymore. He had some solid moments last year with the Jets, the same with the Steelers. You can say those are bad offenses. That is true. But I look at Mike Williams. He can't get off a press like how he used to. He's not this huge downfield threat with his speed. He's a big body, 50-50 catches. He may get you a catch or two every other game. But consistently being on the field week in and week out, I just don't see it. But he has that chemistry. He has that rapport with Justin Herbert in the past. Instead of focusing in on him and giving him majority of the snaps next year at the wide receiver 3 position, I look at someone like Trey Harris, who you drafted with the 55th pick out of Ole Miss. 60 catches, 1,030 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns. He had 17 yards a catch last season. He's a huge deep threat. I think that he can come in. He could be that deep threat that you're looking for in terms of just going out there and winning in one-on-one situations against man coverage. And he's a smooth route runner. He didn't run those many routes at Ole Miss because we know how Ole Miss is going to be called with the head coach that they have in Lane Kiffin. It's a bunch of RPOs, a bunch of post routes, a bunch of hitches, a bunch of crosses. That's it. But at the combine, he ran a lot of great routes. You look at what he was able to do with the Los Angeles Chargers in rookie minicamp. You see him get off very well on the line of scrimmage. I think that he's going to be a very good player moving forward with them. But they need this young core to develop with Ladd McConkey, Trey Harris, and the same with Quentin Johnston. I'd like to see Mike Williams go out there and be this huge threat. But at this point in time of his career, with the injuries that he's been dealing with, it's really just time to just bring him in to be that mentor wide receiver for you. He can still go out there and he can give you some good production, maybe 55 receiving yards and maybe a touchdown. But you need to sway away from that. You have to be careful with having him in that room. And I know that he wants to go out there. He wants to still be a top target. I just don't see it happening with his body. Maybe he proves me wrong. Hopefully that is the case. But I look at the wide receiving position. They're better off for this upcoming season than they were last year. I look at the running back room here. You let Austin Eckler go. He went to the Washington Commanders. You bring in J.K. Dobbins. It was a very good story. J.K. Dobbins dealt with so many injuries with the Baltimore Ravens year in and year out. And for the most part last season, he was a bell cow. But this was the problem with J.K. Dobbins. He missed the back half of last season. He missed some key games. You had to go with Gus Edwards, who missed a lot of time last season as well. That was on short notice for you to bring in power running backs for Coach Harbaugh. They were not durable enough. And that's very rare for Gus Edwards, who was very durable with the Baltimore Ravens, who was a very good football player. Comes over to the Chargers, doesn't have his best year. Look at J.K. Dobbins, had a very good year for his standards. J.K. Dobbins is now with the Denver Broncos on a 1-year deal. We'll see how that works out. And J.K. Dobbins was a very good running back. It was just the injuries. And he has slowed down because of the torn Achilles injury in the past with the Ravens, and the same with the ACL injury. And I'm not surprised that Jim Harbaugh would go out there and bring in a Ravens running back because his brother, John Harbaugh, coaches up that team. There's a lot of good things being said about J.K. Dobbins, and I'm happy to still see him stick around the NFL. But look at the running backs that you have now. Najee Harris, you picked him up in free agency. Now, Najee Harris is a very good running back in terms of being durable. The Steelers, they selected him in the first round. That was a bit of a mistake for that organization because they wanted him to come in. They wanted him to be the focal point week in and week out. That's not the game plan with Najee Harris. He's not on the same level as running backs like Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey when he's fully healthy. The same with Saquon. But I look at Najee Harris. He's a solid power back to have. He's not going to go out there and break a big run for 50 to 60 yards. But I look at Najee, 1,000 yards rushing every single season in his career. He had the 7th most carries in the NFL last year, 14th most rushing yards with 1,043, 6 rushing touchdowns. I look at him. He's a very good counterpart to have alongside Marion Hampton, who you selected in the first round. That's a very good 1-2 punch to take more of that pressure off of Justin Herbert, like I mentioned before, to work off into play action. You look at this division. You go against the Denver Broncos. They have a tough front seven, a tough defense in general. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. What's the one thing with Kansas City that they've had over the last 5 to 6 years consistently? A very good run-stopping defense. You have to be able to weigh those players down, tire them out, and then you let Justin Herbert go out there. He can kill you with his legs. He can kill you over the top with that rocket arm that he has. Now look at the Las Vegas Raiders. Don't sleep on them. They still have Mad Max Crosby. They have Christian Wilkins up front. You want to take some of that pressure off of Justin Herbert. And when you have a consistent run game, it opens up everything else in the pass game. You can run a bunch of screens. You can run play actions. You can section off every single level of the field. You can go deep and immediate routes. You can go underneath. Now you can do some play action screen plays, more RPOs, something that the Chargers have not been able to do on a consistent basis with those offensive coordinators in the past. So I look at Marion Hampton, who was very good at North Carolina. 281 carries, 6 yards a carry his last season, 1,660 rushing yards. If it wasn't for Ashton Jeanty, he would have been the first running back taken off the board in the first round. He's a true franchise running back. But now adding him in with Najee Harris, you don't have to make him the bell cow week in and week out. You can give defenses a mix. Marion Hampton is the more explosive running back. He needs a breather. You put in Najee Harris, who was a bell cow for the Steelers year in and year out. He did mix in carries over the last 2 years with Jaylen Warren, but that's his role. You don't want him to go out there and have 25 to 30 carries every single week because he doesn't have the explosiveness to his run game. But you have that with Marion Hampton. It's a very good 1-2 punch there. So Justin Herbert right now is better off offensively with the wide receiving weapons and the running backs in the backfield with Coach Harbaugh. He's building a culture with this entire organization. And everywhere this man has been, he's been a winner. San Francisco 49ers, they went to the Super Bowl against the Ravens. They did lose. But how many coaches get to go to the Super Bowl at least once in their career? It's very rare. I know that we look at certain coaches like Coach Tomlin, Andy Reid. We look at someone with the Philadelphia Eagles, whether it was Andy Reid in the past or Nick Sirianni, we say, hey, that's just common. But for a lot of coaches, they never get to go to the Super Bowl at least once in their career. And it's more than just that one Super Bowl run with Coach Harbaugh. He helped develop that organization to the next level. With Michigan, he was very successful, won a national championship. With Stanford, very successful at the college level. So everywhere he's been a proven winner. Now, this is the one drawback that I do have with this offense before I get into the offensive line here. Greg Roman. Personally, I really like Greg Roman a lot. He did a lot of good work in the past with Alex Smith. He did great work with Lamar Jackson early on. He helped Lamar Jackson win his first MVP, but he did step down from being the offensive coordinator. He hasn't adapted with the brand new play calls of the NFL. And I'm not saying that every coach has to go out there. They have to be calling plays like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan or Coach LaFleur or even Coach McDaniel. You don't have to do that, but you do have to change up your looks from week to week. It's just so many times where I look at Greg Roman, it's the same plays over and over again. A bunch of slants, a bunch of curls, run up the middle, and maybe a toss play. That's pretty much it with Greg Roman. But at the same time, when I look at Greg Roman, he's done so many good things and he's so smart in terms of using leverage. I do think that it will work out. It just comes down to this. Will he be able to adapt and will he be able to go out there and change his plays on the fly instead of calling plays like it's the late 90s, early 2000s? And he'll have a couple plays that'll make you just basically open up your eyes and say, okay, I didn't see that coming. If you can do more of that with the Chargers moving forward, you're going to be in a better place. Trust me. And I want to give Greg Roman a lot of credit here. Those are just my critiques with him. NFL films came out and they showed some behind the scenes footage with every single team last year in training camp. The one that really stuck out to me was Greg Roman being on the field alongside Coach Harbaugh. They're joking around with Justin Herbert and they're saying, man, use those legs. They're kidding around and they're laughing, but Greg Roman's like, man, seriously, just go out there and use your legs a little bit more. So it was a play in the regular season to where they ran quarterback power with Justin Herbert. You didn't see that in the past with Shane Steichen. You didn't see that in the past with Coach Lombardi and Kellen Moore. And it took the defense off guard for a second. They're like, okay, Justin Herbert's running the football like he's Lamar Jackson, like he's Josh Allen. He has the capability to do so with his legs. And we've seen Greg Roman go out there and have play action bootleg plays for him. This is the one drawback with Justin Herbert that really pisses me off with his game. He'll just sit in the pocket like he's a scarecrow, like he can't move around. And then the next play, he'll start to move around a little bit. If he can just trust himself more with his athleticism. I know at Oregon, he had a very good offensive line. But his first year in the NFL, he was able to just move around, make a lot of plays with his legs. And he was relatively healthy last year, coming down to the back end of the season. I know that he suffered an ankle injury early on against the Steelers, but he needs to be able to go out there, use his legs more, and open up everything. When you look at Patrick Mahomes, he's able to use his legs and break down defenses. The same with Josh Allen, the same with Lamar Jackson, especially with Lamar Jackson. When he starts scrambling around, defenders go crazy. And I'm not saying that Justin Herbert has to go out there and run at the same level of Lamar Jackson, same with Josh Allen, but he's just able to use his legs just a little bit more. It can open up so many different passing lanes on the back end of your defense. We've even seen this with Kyler Murray. I know that you look at Justin Herbert, he's his pocket passing quarterback, but man, he's big and he can use his legs. And I love that Greg Roman's trying to bring that out of him. If they can get him out of that shell, they can go out there and they can really help elevate this offense to the next level. Now, when I look at this offensive line, last season, you did have Rashawn Slater. You had Joe Alt. Joe Alt was phenomenal last year. He was my rookie lineman of the year, just a great player last year. And that's the worst that he's going to be at his career. He should continue to get better year in and year out. This is the one problem that I had last season. The interior of this offensive line was terrible. They weren't good. Bradley, he did have the great moment to where he stuck up for Justin Herbert against New Orleans Saints. The Saints defender is rolling his leg. Bradley comes over. He just pushes him down. He's basically ready to beat him up. But he's not a good, consistent center on a year-to-year basis. So they go out there and they bring in Mekhi Becton from the Philadelphia Eagles. Mekhi Becton had a great year last year for the Eagles. But I will say this, with the New York Jets, he was up and down, and he dealt with a lot of injuries. If he can stay fully healthy, this is going to be one of the best pickups that went underneath the radar this offseason. And I look at Mekhi Becton playing alongside Joe Alt and the same with Rashawn Slater. This is a big offensive line. They have Zion Johnson right now taking snaps at center. We'll see if he can work out at the center position. And they have Bradley at the left guard position. That's a better offensive line than they had last season. And it may be the best offensive line that Justin Herbert is going to play with so far in his young career. Because I'm telling you, the offensive line in the past, it was just horrible, especially before they drafted Rashawn Slater. He had little to no time in the pocket, but yet he's still throwing the football on a dime. I love what Coach Harbaugh is doing, building this offensive line, giving him a true run game, and giving him a veteran offensive play caller that knows different looks in the NFL and is going to help him get up to that next level. And you don't need Justin Herbert to go out there and throw for 4,000 yards in the season, have 35 passing touchdowns a year. We've seen him do that before. And no offense to Justin Herbert, no offense to the Chargers. This is more so towards the ownership and the front office as a whole in the past. You did that with Justin Herbert. How did that work out for you? You didn't win too many games. You weren't in the NFL playoffs year in and year out. This is not the standard for the Chargers. You did this in year one with a retooling offense. You should be able to do this year in and year out now with Coach Harbaugh having his pieces. And we're still early into this experiment with Harbaugh, Greg Roman, and Jesse Minter being the DC. Now, that's it for the offensive side of things. I want to come in on and talk about the defense for a second. Their defense here. No more Joey Bosa. It feels so weird to say that because Joey Bosa has been a mainstay with the Chargers for his entire career. The only problem with Joey Bosa, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. That's the one thing with Joey Bosa. And I really wish he was able to just go out there and just stay healthy for majority of this time with the Chargers. When we look at Nick Bosa and we say that he's one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago, Joey Bosa was a better prospect coming out of Ohio State at that point in time. And I know that Nick Bosa came out behind him, but Joey Bosa was amazing early on. It's just those injuries. And I felt like we were robbed. Just as an NFL fan, we were robbed of just seeing how good could Joey Bosa be at this level. And every now and then we'll see him go out there. He'll step up. He'll have a game. And you'll just say, hey, that's why they select him in the first round. I won't say that Joey Bosa was a bust. You can say that. But I'll look at Joey Bosa from this standpoint. If it wasn't for the injuries, man, he would still be on this roster. And he'll be a top defensive end to have in the NFL. But that's no longer the case. He became more so of a rotational piece, especially with Thule coming out and basically being a consistent pass rusher last year. Thule had 8.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He's now your starting lineman every single week at the linebacker position. to come off the edge. Khalil Mack, you did give him a contract extension, 6 sacks last year, 2 forced fumbles. He is starting to regress as a player, but he's still awesome to have. That's why you're bringing him back for at least one more season. You have Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree's a very good rotational defensive edge rusher. Had some very good years with the Steelers. Did take a step back without the Steelers, but with the Atlanta Falcons, performed very well. Last year with the Chargers, 6 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. Very good player. You drafted Kyle Kennard. Now, Kyle Kennard was drafted with the 125th pick. Edge rusher out of South Carolina. 6'4", 254 pounds, 11.5 sacks last season, 3 forced fumbles. He's going to work very well in a rotation early on with Jesse Mentor. Do not be surprised if this man is their starting edge rusher week in and week out towards the end of the season. And we've seen this before with Jesse Mentor. He'll go out there, he'll bring in edge rushers that you may not know of. He develops them to the next level. They're ready to play by week 1. But there's going to be a huge emphasis on getting to the quarterback and sealing the edge early on with these young defenders. And when I look at the rushing defense last year with the Chargers, considering the fact that they played 3 safeties, the rushing defense performed very well, in my opinion, in big-time moments. Usually when you have 3 safeties on the field, your defense is going to take a step back in terms of rushing defense. That wasn't the case. And this is a defense they play very fast. Now, towards the end of the season, when they were dealing with injuries at the safety position, they did take a step back, but your starting players are out. It's not too many teams in the NFL. When their starters go out, they're going to be the same. And Jesse Mentor did the best that he could against CJ in the playoffs. There's only so much that you can do when your quarterback throws for 4 interceptions. Just keeping it real here. And they played Kansas City very close. Early on in the year, you were missing your starting 2 tackles. No Rashawn Slater, no Joe Alt. Herbert dealing with an ankle injury. They kept that game close. They went against the Chiefs again. No Ladd McConkey dealing with injuries yet again. You kept the game close. Your defense helped you out in those moments. And the reason why you can have 3 safeties on the field and your defense is to take a major step back against run-heavy teams is because of Derwin James. Derwin James was starting to regress as a player with Brandon Staley. That man was so terrible as a head coach and as a defensive play caller. But you got to see Derwin James go back to be that downhill linebacker last year. 1 interception, 7 pass deflections, and I know he's a safety. But he can play the linebacking role because he's a thumper. He's a hard-hitting safety. And he'll have a couple moments that just make you shake your head and say, man, I wish you were in the 90s and the early 2000s. Because anytime he hits a player, I feel like the referees, they're going to throw a flag. But look at Derwin James. He's a very good inbox safety. But his man coverage ability isn't the best. The same with his own coverage ability. But that's why you have Gilman. Gilman was able to come in last year, 1 interception, 4 pass deflections. Elijah Molden, 3 interceptions, 7 pass deflections. And if you don't believe me of how good this defense is, against the Atlanta Falcons last year, they won a football game. They didn't score an offensive touchdown. And I'm being serious here. You can go back and watch the game. Kirk Cousins threw 4 interceptions in that matchup. And I know that Kirk Cousins said that he was dealing with an arm injury. I'll hold him to it. But at the same time, they made his life a living hell with a bunch of undrafted players on the back end of their defense. And I look at Cam Hart. Last year, Cam Hart was a very good cornerback for them. Gave you a lot of good moments. He's just 25 years old. Dante Jackson, you're bringing him over from the Steelers. 5 interceptions last season, 8 pass deflections. He's a solid cornerback. All he has to do is just stay fully healthy. You brought in Tony Jefferson when your safeties went down. He came in. He gave you some okay production. He's not going to be a starting safety week in and week out. But I look at the secondary that they have right now. They have a lot of good players that fit the system with Jesse Mentor. And we've seen him coach before at the Michigan level, produce one of the best defenses in college. We've seen him coach before in the NFL, was a very good defensive coordinator then. He can adjust on the fly. There's going to be a defense that can get to the quarterback and give you different looks on the back end. And they can rotate their cornerbacks because of the depth that they have. He's one of the better defensive minds that you can have in the NFL. And it was just year 1 with the Chargers. With all that being said, I do believe that the Chargers will take yet another massive step in this division. I look at Kansas City. They're still the team to beat. They just went to a Super Bowl yet again. I look at the Denver Broncos. All respect to the Broncos. Very good football team with Sean Payton. Sean Payton is a very good head coach in his own right. The Chargers swept them last year. And every year is not the same. I understand that. And I look at the Raiders. They're trying to stabilize their organization. You're bringing over Pete Carroll. Brand new head coach of the Raiders, very successful in the past with the Seahawks. Geno Smith, solid quarterback to have. They're still a rebuilding team. But look at the Chargers now. You're no longer the team that's retooling and rebuilding on the offensive end. You should have the pieces that you need to go out there and win enough football games to get back to the dance. And eventually, Justin Herbert, sooner than later, is going to have to step up in the NFL playoffs. That is what separates good quarterbacks. That's what separates great quarterbacks from just good quarterbacks. And right now, look at Justin Herbert. He's a top 10 quarterback in my opinion. You may say top 5. But his talent is top 5 easily. He's just a top 10 quarterback for me. But look at him. He's been put through hell early on in his career. This is the best head coach that he's ever had in his career, even dating back to Oregon. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about the Los Angeles Chargers, and do you believe that they can take yet another massive step in year 2 with Coach Harbaugh and make the NFL playoffs and finally make some noise? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video.